Lawyers of Reddit, what was the best gotcha moment you ever experienced? Told this story a few years back, but everything old is new again. My brother is a divorce attorney. His most memorable case, he was representing a guy in a divorce custody battle who was accused of horrific child abuse. Very graphic, very detailed depositions from the young kids against daddy. Things look grim. Then my brother notices the deposition transcript, done by social workers under oath, contains a question at the end from one of the kids. Did I hit my marks? My brother had previously tried to make it as an actor in Hollywood right out of high school, failing miserably, and decided to go into law, an altogether different form of acting. He wonders how little kids know about acting jargon. Subpoenas the wife's personal checking account during discovery. Sure enough, acting lessons. Deposes an extremely sketchy acting coach, and panicked coach quickly coughs up DVDs of practice interrogations with the kids. Hours of coaching the kids on exactly what imaginary things to say about daddy. He says it was his one and only Perry Mason moment in 20 plus years of practice, and had got sole custody of the kids. Obligatory not a lawyer, but my grandparents had the longest running divorce settlement in LA history in the 70s. My grandpa refused to pay his alimony. One year, he went to Hawaii and sent my grandma a postcard that said something along the lines, but more wittingly, "I'm enjoying all of your alimony money, look at what I'm doing with it." She drove it straight to her lawyer, and it was game over for Gramps. Oh man, here's another one. I had a DUI case that seemed pretty standard. Police report said that they saw a car with a headlight out leaving a BWW parking lot. He stopped him. The guy failed road signs and blew a .09. I have a meeting with the kid to get his side of the story. My client was drinking in a BWW watching some MMA fight. So it was super packed. Sometimes for events like this, police officers hang out inside to make sure no one gets in fights, steals stuff, etc. Anyway, my client was flirting with the bartender, and she asked him to go home with her when she got off. He, being a man of about 25, says yes. She says she'll drive him, and he tells her okay, but that he had to grab his cell phone charger out of his car. He walks out of BWW to do so and the cop followed him out. It was pouring, so instead of just opening his door and reaching for his charger, client gets in the car to rummage through his glove box for it. When he steps out, the cop is standing there and demands for him to do road signs, then hits him with DUI. We set for trial. At the motions hearing, I asked the cop if he'd followed my client out of BWW. He said no, that he'd been patrolling in his car. He said he had no idea who was in the car when he approached it. He swore the car was on. So at trial, I let him tell his story. I made him confirm to the jury that he was in his car doing routine patrol. He was never inside BWW. He didn't follow my client to his car to entrap him into a DUI. Then I played the video from inside BWW clearly showing the cop watch my client get up from the bar and follow him out. Not fricking guilty. Someone told me this. The lawyer was describing the theft. The footprints make it seem as though he didn't go to the basement and the defendant said, "Actually we did." I acted for a plumber who ripped up a tile floor to replace a pipe. He installed new tile on top but warned the owners not to walk on it for 48 hours. He emphasized not to let their kids or their dogs walk on it either. They walked on it but alleged the defects were caused by improper install. We had an expert do a report which confirmed that it was consistent with proper installation but people walking on it too soon. Crazy homeowners still went to trial on it. In their evidence disclosure they included a series of pictures. One of the pictures had in the foreground a tile that was tilted upwards. The background very clearly showed a dog's paw pressing down on the other end of the tile. That wasn't so much an I got them situation as they got themselves. I was deposing a guy in a large breach of contract fraud action. I asked him if he'd ever been convicted of a crime. He said no. Later in the dep I asked him the question again and there was no objection and he answered no. I then whipped out his indictment for felony fraud and his conviction for misdemeanor conspiracy and he denied it was him until I started asking about his co-conspirator, his son, and then he gave me the Oh yeah, I remember something about that. I was involved in a patent dispute years ago that was basically large company going after small company. Not only did the judge decide we didn't infringe on the patents, but he then went on to invalidate the patents due to prior art we were able to show. In a protective order hearing, a respondent admitted on cross that he choked his partner. His attorney looked like his head was going to explode. The judge still only granted an order not to abuse. He wouldn't grant the stay away or any other relief we asked for. Go figure. My only full trial. Contractor ripping off my client who was no saint. I went through entire contract where each sub was listed and he agreed to each line as being part of contract. He agreed that amount was to be paid to the subs. He agreed to the total. What he failed to do was list any profit. My last question was, where is your profit in this contract? No answer from him. As written, he was working for free. Case dismissed by judge without me having to present my side. Not as exciting in the moment as some other ones here, but we hired a private investigator to track our defendant in a fraud asset recovery case. Private investigator returned with a photograph of torn pieces of paper that clearly constituted a ripped up note, albeit in a foreign language. I happened to know said foreign language, so pieced it together and realized it was a letter written by the defendant raging at his accomplice for making highly specific mistakes that fricked him over in the context of our fraud asset recovery case. Obviously, we later had this verified and sworn to via affidavit by an official translator. It was unbelievable the handwriting was a match. Plus, he'd also signed it, and the contents were so specific. Contained information about specific amounts going into specific trusts under specific names, that it was basically a smoking gun. We almost thought they'd planted it to throw us off, but the guy was just stupid and arrogant. Ran into a bit of a fight re-admissibility, but the letter ultimately helped us receive a significant settlement that made our clients extremely happy. When I was a prosecutor, I had a guy who was representing himself. He was charged with car theft and evading. He was actually able to escape the cops for quite a distance and was captured later. His defense was that he wasn't the person. I got his calls from jail and he talked so much to his girlfriend about how he had committed the crimes. The look on his face when I told him that I was providing him copies of his jail calls was great. Edit, I remember an even better one. I had another guy who was representing himself. It was a residential burglary and one of the elderly neighbors saw the defendant running from the house. At trial, the defendant was cross-examining the witness and he asked, "Now when you saw this person running away?" And the witness said, "You. I saw you running away." This is so petty. I've had much bigger moments, but because of the character of the other side this will always be my favorite. Doing a boundary dispute, a squabble over what was essentially a few inches of land. OS was a lawyer, and an absolute asshole. He was acting for himself. The whole "a lawyer who acts for himself has a fool for a client" thing was bang on for him. But he was a deeply unpleasant guy, a bully who thought that he was the smartest guy in the room. Part of his case hinged on wheelie beans and how prior to the boundary having been moved there wasn't space to store a full-size bean beside the house. The fact you now could mend clearly the boundary must have moved. That was the extent of his evidence. It really was thin stuff. During the actual trial he pulled a fast one by suddenly producing an old aerial photo ostensibly to show the boundary at the front of the property had also moved. A fast one because you have to disclose stuff like that in advance. You can't just sit on something relevant and then suddenly whip it out at trial with a flourish. Whilst he was making his submissions that it should be admissible, I looked more closely at it, away from the bit of the boundary he said it was relevant to, and realized that it very clearly showed a wheelie bin in exactly the spot his case said there couldn't be one. Told the judge we were happy for the photo be admitted after all, got the other side to confirm the date it was taken, then pointed out he'd just completely fricked his case. That photo did him for nearly $50,000 in adverse costs. Couldn't happen to a more deserving chapter. That's all for today's video. Hope you guys liked it. If you liked the video, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, the best thing you can do is simply watch the videos. But if you really want to see the channel thrive, subscribe, like, comment, add to favorites, add to playlist, and share with friends. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Reddit and Insta. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you with tomorrow's upload.